Hello and welcome along to this week's Liverpool.com podcast. I'm your host once again, Matt Addison. Tom Beattie is alongside me. We're not going to talk about Plymouth at the weekend. We are going to talk, though, about the last ever Merseyside derby at Goodison Park. Liverpool go there in the Premier League with the chance to go 9 points clear. We're going to have a big chat and a big preview of that huge game throughout the rest of this show. Don't forget, though, to get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, you can go to nordvpn.com/bloodred. Our link gives you 4 extra months on their 2-year plan. And, of course, there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee as well. The link with all of the information is in the podcast episode description box below. But, Tom, let's get into the meat of it. It's, as I say, the last ever Goodison Park derby. We know that now Liverpool and Everton have both been knocked out of the FA Cup. They're not going to meet in that competition or any other after this Wednesday's meeting. So it's a big game, isn't it? It's going to be, I think, an emotional occasion for Everton fans. And it's going to be up to Liverpool to match that intensity and show that they can come out on top in this game. Are you looking forward to it, or has the derby belly begun already?
It's begun already for me personally. I think it's always a tough game for Liverpool, isn't it? No matter who's kind of in charge or, on the pitch for Liverpool, it always just seems to be a fixture that brings up a lot of emotion, I think, on the pitch. And yeah, I think that's been reflected in the results down the years, hasn't it? It's always been a tough place to go for Liverpool, particularly in the last kind of 10, 15 years. And there haven't been many wins there for Liverpool, even under Jurgen Klopp. I think off the top of my head, I think we probably only won there, I think, once, maybe. So, yeah, it was obviously a tough place for Liverpool to go. And, yeah, I think, obviously, coming into the game as well, there's the context, as there always is, of Liverpool. We're kind of going for a title at the moment, and we got these 5 big games coming up in the coming weeks as well. So, and Everton, on the other hand, they've kind of got their own challenges, haven't they? Obviously, they're looking over the shoulder in terms of that relegation battle, and they've had a bit of a jump under David Moyes in recent weeks as well since he came in. So I think it's perfectly poised, really, in terms of a battle, and I feel this game always is when it comes round, particularly the one at Goodison. It always seems to have a lot of kind of narratives around the game, and like you say, the final Goodison Park derby as well, under the lights. And we know that it's always a tough place to go for any team, and an atmosphere that they're able to generate. So Liverpool are going to have to deal with that, and I think particularly coming off the back of the Plymouth game, I think the players who were missing at the weekend, they'll be looking for a big response, I think, at Goodison as well.
Yeah, it's going to need one, isn't it? It's going to be intense. It's going to be probably quite difficult. It's obviously a game that was rearranged. It was postponed from a few weeks ago because of the wind and the storms. Obviously, there's been a change of manager since then as well. I think David Moyes has won 3 out of his first 4 games. Obviously, loses to Bournemouth last weekend. But I think it's a game that probably you can argue both ways in terms of whether the rearrangement suits Liverpool. I think, having played a Sean Dyche team in the wind, this is probably just as difficult as playing a David Moyes team here, where, okay, the wind isn't going to be a factor, but the under the lights element that you mentioned before, that the atmosphere is going to be incredible as well. You can argue it both ways. I think it's up to Liverpool really to stand up to that challenge. But as you say, you'd expect a lot of different players to play. The fact that they've given a rest to Salah, Van Dijk, Szoboszlai, Gravenberch, and so on, pretty much the entire starting team not just didn't play against Plymouth, but didn't even travel. I think that is going to be a big part of this match as well. I mean, are you expecting Everton to come out and try and attack Liverpool and make it an end-to-end game, or is this going to be one where David Moyes is a little bit more pragmatic and sits in and maybe there's a low block? I mean, again, probably one of those that you can argue both ways, but with the crowd pushing them on, there's got to be an element where they have a bit of a go, hasn't there?
Yeah, I personally think they will have a go on the day. And I remember back, we're talking probably 15, 20 years ago now, aren't we? But them sort of great Everton teams under David Moyes, I think they were always able to kind of give Liverpool a big challenge in games. And there were a lot of games sort of back in the day, wasn't there, where they were able to come out on top. I think the 04-05 season, they beat Liverpool, didn't they? Lee Carsley, I remember 06-07 as well. They got a result, didn't they? I think it was 3-0 that game. So yeah, there was always kind of results in there. I remember an FA Cup game as well, away from home. I think Dan Gosling got the winner, didn't he, in injury time. So there's always been them games under David Moyes where I think they're able to certainly raise it for the visit of Liverpool. And yeah, I think it's going to be one of them. Like you say, Liverpool are going to have to handle sort of the outside pressure, particularly with it being the final sort of Merseyside derby at Goodison Park as well. And I've seen on social media, you know, there's going to be kind of coach greetings and that sort of thing. So I just kind of think it's going to be one of them nights, I think, for Everton, where they're going to try and keep Liverpool sort of maybe, you know, penned in a sense, and maybe they will be more willing maybe to sit back and sort of, you know, invite that pressure. But maybe as we're beginning to see a lot more in the Premier League now, maybe, you know, hit Liverpool on the counter-attack. And there's been a lot of teams that have had, you know, a lot of success with that this season, particularly Nottingham Forest. And I think that's maybe given a bit of a blueprint for teams maybe, you know, particularly up against what you consider to be the kind of top opposition in the league this season. So, yeah, I think David Moyes will be looking at this game. Maybe coming into it, they're not exactly favourites. Obviously, you'd always make Liverpool favourites, I think, given sort of the form guide and where Liverpool are in the league. But yeah, I think it is a little bit of an opportunity for Everton as well, maybe to spring a surprise on Liverpool. And I think, yeah, in the game, maybe they will sit in but try and hit Liverpool on the counter-attack. And I think Liverpool are going to have to kind of stave off that pressure maybe early on, as always seems to be the case in Merseyside derbies, and sort of ride that out, and maybe for the final half an hour show that little bit more quality and kind of get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't got much else to play for, have they? Obviously, it's a new era under David Moyes. They've won a couple of games. They're not going to get relegated. They're not going to win a trophy. This is kind of, you know, Everton's biggest game of the rest of this season, isn't it, really? It's the biggest game for a long time. They obviously won the same fixture last season and got the chance to sing that they'd cost Liverpool the league at Goodison Park. But, you know, it's not quite the full story, but I think Liverpool will try and put that right, certainly on Wednesday night. Before we talk about the game in a little bit more detail, there's a couple of bits that I wanted to go into. One of those is your favourite Goodison Park memory. Obviously, it is the last time that Liverpool are going to go there, as we said at the top of the show. And just before we press record on this, I mean, we went through, and there's not too many to pick from in recent time. You mentioned that Jurgen Klopp had only won there once or twice. I think once was without fans as well. But I think we're both in agreement, aren't we, that our favourite Goodison Park memory is the other win that Jurgen Klopp got at Goodison Park. And yeah, Sadio Mane was heavily involved in that one.
Yeah, I think it was +4. I think on the clock, wasn't it? 94 minutes in, and it was typical Jurgen Klopp, wasn't it? Kind of up against it, and when you feel like the game's done, he was able to pop up, wasn't he? And that's always the enduring image, I think, at Goodison. You know, them kind of late winners. I remember Dirk Kuyt as well. We're probably going back to maybe 2010, I think now. The two penalties that he scored and running off, obviously, to the away end there at Goodison. And they're great memories looking back, aren't they? You know, it's always a great game, and it's a great away day, I think, for the Liverpool fans as well. If you do come out on the winning side, and you're hoping it's going to be one of them nights for Liverpool this time around. But yeah, I think maybe the Mane one certainly sticks out for me. And yeah, that was kind of the seeds of that Liverpool team, really, wasn't it? And in the years after that, it obviously the Liverpool team went on and did what they did. But them kind of victories early on under Jurgen Klopp in them first few years, I think really provided a bit of a springboard for that team, didn't he? And yeah, it was a great day that. I remember where I was and everything. So yeah, that's certainly what I enjoyed an awful lot. And I think certainly the Goodison Park derbies, they always kind of stand out in my memory for some reason, either winning or losing, it seems to be. And one of the first games I remember was probably the one with Michael Owen. I think it was maybe 2003-04 season. Yeah, and I think Danny Murphy scored in that game as well. So Harry Kewell as well. I think he'd just come to Liverpool. So Yeah, it's always a place where, it evokes a lot of memories, and it's going to be strange next season when obviously they do play at Bramley-Moore Dock, and it's obviously a new era for the city as well. So yeah, it's sad to see the place go in a strange way, even as a Liverpool supporter. But yeah, I think Liverpool hopefully will be looking at this as an opportunity to maybe spoil the party a little bit, and maybe get that final sort of bragging rights maybe on the final day at Goodison for a Merseyside derby. So yeah, it's an opportunity for Liverpool, I think, to make a little bit of history as well along the way on Wednesday, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting next season, isn't it, with a new stadium for Everton, and how that derby is going to feel. It's not going to quite be the same. I think Goodison has been a bit of a leveller for them. It'll be interesting to see how they manage that transition. Obviously, Liverpool have had their own stadium decision to make. They've chosen to stay where they are and redevelop, obviously. Goodison maybe not quite in as good nick as Anfield was, and it would have been a bigger job to do that, but it's interesting that they've gone down that different path. But let's not look too far ahead. We'll go back to this specific game in particular. Obviously, Liverpool have the chance to go 9 points clear at the top of the Premier League table. To me, the fact that they've beaten Bournemouth and gone there and won, obviously that gives Liverpool almost a bit of a template, really, in terms of a similar level of performance. I think would probably get the job done against Everton, but it probably gives them a little bit more breathing room as well. So obviously they can go 9 points clear, but if I offered you a draw right now, would you take it?
Yeah, I was looking at the next 5 fixtures, and I think if Liverpool are able to come out of that with 13 points, I think that'd be a really good return. And yeah, possibly this is the game I'm looking at. It conjures up so much kind of emotion, and it's just always such a tricky place to go. And obviously the City away in there and Villa away as well. But yeah, possibly a draw wouldn't be the worst result. We know, like you referenced before, that Liverpool went there last season, and it stopped the title charge dead, really, didn't it? That was kind of the final death knell for the title charge last season. So yeah, I think Liverpool will be hoping to avoid defeat first and foremost in this game, and I think they've got to be kind of positive in their mindset. I think coming into the game, like you say, the Bournemouth game, it does provide a bit of a blueprint for Liverpool in these kind of games. And obviously Everton, they're not as kind of expansive, are they, in sort of the style of play as well. And, Liverpool will have to kind of break them down on the day and show that bit of quality, I think. And like I said before, maybe there will be that 20 minutes, half an hour at the start where, the atmosphere is going to be up, but it's kind of down to the players, I think, to kind of silence that. And maybe if Liverpool are able to get an early goal, maybe that's the way of going about that, I think. And yeah, it's one of them games, like I say, it always conjures up emotion. But yeah, I think Liverpool should be looking at this as a chance for a victory. But yeah, maybe a draw wouldn't be the worst result given kind of recent years and, looking at, the record under Jurgen Klopp, like we referenced before, only a couple of wins in there. And yeah, it's always a tough place to go for Liverpool. So yeah, if it was to turn out to be a draw, it possibly, in the grand scheme of things, wouldn't be the worst result.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at. As I say, the Bournemouth game has given them a little bit of breathing room to a certain extent, because I think most people thought that could have quite easily been a draw. Obviously, Mohamed Salah, the difference maker for Liverpool. But it's interesting you mentioned there as well that the next 5 games that Liverpool play, obviously Wolves at home at the weekend, Villa away, City away, and then Newcastle at home. Obviously, that's a tricky run. 5 games in the Premier League in 15 days, and then I think pretty much 1 game in the following month or 5 weeks in the Premier League because of the international break, an FA Cup weekend, a couple of other things as well in there as well to break that up. So it's going to be a really crucial period, isn't it, in the next few games. Obviously, those games are difficult for Liverpool. Just having a look at Arsenal's fixtures here as well. They've got Leicester Saturday lunchtime at the weekend, which you'd fancy that they could probably go and win that one fairly comfortably. West Ham, Forest, Manchester United and Chelsea coming up for them. So not the easiest fixtures, probably slightly simpler than Liverpool's in terms of maybe not the names, but certainly where Manchester United and Chelsea have been in recent weeks in particular. You'd fancy them to get some points there. But it's going to be a crucial run, isn't it? I know Arne Slot was asked about it in his press conference, and he kind of said, well, look, it's the Premier League, every game is hard, and the whole season is going to be difficult for Liverpool. But if Liverpool could maybe win 3 and draw 2 even of the next 5, that'd be, I think, a big step in the right direction, because they've got, the extra buffer. The fact that they're in the Carabao Cup final is going to mean that, obviously, up to this point, they've had a game in hand to play over Arsenal. At some point, that's going to flip, and Liverpool are going to have the opportunity to potentially cash in on that and go a little bit further ahead and put the pressure on them. So it's going to be an interesting period, isn't it? 5 games in 15 days, as I say. You mentioned 12 points before. Is that kind of where you're at in terms of where you'd like Liverpool to be at the end of this run, do you think?
Yeah, I think if Liverpool can get through these 5 games, maybe without losing, I think that'd be really important just for where Liverpool are at the moment. And you mentioned about the buffer that Liverpool have got, and that is the biggest gift that they've been able to give themselves coming into this period of the season. It does kind of allow that room for error a little bit for Liverpool now. And I think the pressure's on Arsenal. I think at this period in the season, I think that they've got a lot of ground to make up. I think at this point as well, like you say, you look at kind of the fixture guide, and, there are a couple of tricky games in there for Arsenal coming up. I think the Forest away game will be one where they might be looking at that with a bit of trepidation, and it's always that case, I think, when you go away to the likes of Old Trafford as well. If you're one of them bigger clubs, it's always a bit of a grudge match, and I think it's going to be a tricky period for them as well. But I think Liverpool have got to go quietly about the business, and you'd be hoping, really, from an ideal point of view, that the Liverpool go away to Everton and kind of, silence the crowd pretty early, and maybe get the job done. We know it's never that simple, but I think that'll just allow such a springboard for Arne Slot and his team kind of moving forward. And I think the City away game as well, that's always going to be tough, and we know that they've struggled in recent times, but other than the Arsenal game, I think there have been seeds of recovery in there, and obviously they've added a few players to the squad, haven't they, in January as well. So I think by the time that game comes around, maybe they may have bedded in a little bit more, and I think it might be, more of a tricky kind of, a tricky fixture for Liverpool. So obviously you look on both sides of it for the two kind of teams challenging for the title at the moment, and I think there's tough games for both teams, if I'm honest. But yeah, if you can come through this period without losing, given the buffer that Liverpool do have as well, I think that puts Liverpool in a great position for that final run in then.
Yeah, I think it's so intense, isn't it, over the next few weeks? I'd be surprised if Liverpool won all 5 of those games, even if they were spread out, to be honest. When you look at some of the difficult trips, to go to Villa and to City in the space of a few days is going to be really, really hard. But, we have to remember that it doesn't necessarily matter if Liverpool draw a couple of matches. They have got that buffer. And I think, looking at Arsenal's games as well, I mentioned that they may be slightly easier than Liverpool's next 5, but not necessarily easy that you'd fancy them to win all 5 as well. And I think it's still the case that they've only won a maximum of 3 games in a row in the Premier League all season. I don't think they've put together a longer run than that up until this point. So we're asking Liverpool to drop off and Arsenal to do something they haven't yet done in order for that gap to be closed. So I think Liverpool have to be reasonably confident in terms of that. But let's go back to the Everton game then. Let's sort of talk through the main team selection points. I think most of the team will pick itself. I did think that the fact that Conor Bradley didn't play or didn't even travel to Plymouth over the weekend possibly suggested that Trent Alexander-Arnold might not make the Merseyside derby. Arne Slot said that he has trained a little bit yesterday. He might as well train it a little bit today, just in terms of trying to squeeze it through, if you like, in terms of getting him involved. Would you go with Trent if he is sort of 90-95% fit and ready to go, or would you be happy enough if it was Conor Bradley maybe for an hour and then maybe Trent off the bench?
I think Arne Slot showed a lot of flexibility in that position so far when Conor Bradley's been available, and I think it is always an option for Slot moving into this game. I think what Trent maybe gives you, particularly up against a team like Everton, is that ability to pick out a pass. And looking at that kind of final third, if you're able to kind of break Everton down, and if there is a low block there, or maybe they're trying to play Liverpool on the counter attack, maybe just having that player who can break a defence down with kind of a pass, or maybe just a bit of genius from that position, that might just be the difference. And I think Liverpool, they'll be looking at moments of quality in this game, I think, more so than, kind of a performance, I think, overall. And yeah, I think that being able to kind of bring people into the lineup as well, who obviously missed the cup game up against Plymouth. You mentioned obviously the players who did miss out: Gravenberch, Szoboszlai, Mo Salah, Addison, Van Dijk as well. So it does kind of offer Slot that ability to kind of bring them back in and sort of go from there. And I think that they've been, paramount in this title charge so far, haven't they? They've kind of led the way. And I think, again, in this game, maybe giving them that weekend off, I think that's going to kind of prove dividends for the manager, I think. And yeah, it's always going to be a tough game up against Everton. I think that, they're going to bring a real challenge to Liverpool in this game, I think. But, possibly, I think what we'll be telling is kind of looking maybe at the lineup that came up against Tottenham in the League Cup semi-final. I think the Slot did kind of put a lot of importance on that game, and I think you could see that from his lineup. So yeah, the Conor Bradley point was a good one, I think. He obviously played the full 90 in that game, didn't he? So it is possible that Slot might go with Bradley from the start, and maybe go with that settled back four that he had up against Spurs in the League Cup. So you had Konate, Van Dijk and Robertson closing out that back four, and then obviously in front of him you had Gravenberch as well and Szoboszlai. So yeah, I think there's always that option, I think, given the rotation that happened at the weekend, maybe to go with a similar lineup to the one that he went with up against Spurs in that game. And obviously the team did so well, didn't he, to come through that second leg. So yeah, I think it may be a similar lineup, I reckon, in this Everton game.
Yeah, I think it'll be very similar. I think obviously right back is a little bit injury dictated. I think it'll be pretty nailed on that it'll be Andy Robertson, and the centre-backs, and Gravenberch, McAllister and Szoboszlai. The only other sort of dilemma, I think, maybe is the number 9. Obviously, we saw Luis Diaz play against Plymouth at the weekend. He's played a little bit through the middle. Darwin Núñez actually played really well the last time he played. Arne Slot said in his press conference this morning that he had just become a father, and that was why he maybe didn't perform to his best when he came on over the weekend. But would you go with Darwin Núñez as a centre-forward, or would you go with Diogo Jota, even though he played really poorly at the weekend? Or even Luis Diaz could go again and maybe move into that number 9 position? I think, as we've mentioned a few times on this show already, there's probably arguments either way with all of those options. But which way do you reckon he might go?
Yeah, I think maybe that lineup at Plymouth was kind of telling, wasn't it, for what he's going to go for up against Everton. So, yeah, obviously Jota played and Diaz as well. But, yeah, I think in an ideal world, for me, I'd still be pumping for Jota. I think he's kind of the best option out of those three. I think he's the most kind of natural in terms of that number 9 position, and the one who kind of guarantees goals more so than the other two. But yeah, I think Darwin Núñez, possibly from the comments that Slot did make in and around the Plymouth game, yeah, possibly that could be an option. And he always kind of creates that bit of jeopardy, doesn't he? And maybe this is kind of that sort of game where you need a bit of that, and maybe someone, even off the bench maybe, in terms of Núñez, to be fair. But, even from the start, I think he's a player who maybe might just bring, something a little bit different, kind of leading the line. And we expect them to be a little bit more physical, don't we, Everton? And I think he's able to pull himself about in that respect. And I think he showed a lot of improvement so far this season with his back to goal as well. So I wouldn't have as many doubts about that in terms of his play as well. So if Liverpool do have to go a little bit more direct in the game, which they did up against Forest, didn't they? Obviously, Forest play that direct style themselves, and we saw that a little bit more with Liverpool in that game. And obviously, Van Dijk's always capable of that kind of that long ball kind of tactic, and able to switch the play and that sort of thing. So Yeah, it might be an option to go with Darwin in this game, I think. And yeah, it's good to have that plethora of options, I think, for the manager. But yeah, I think it was pretty much telling. I felt in the Plymouth game that he did go with Diaz and Jota, and that kind of told me a little bit that maybe Núñez will be the player to come in for the Everton game. But like you say, the caveat is that obviously he did miss the game, didn't he, due to a family matter. So yeah, we just don't know, do we? But I think, yeah, he possibly could be the best option, I think, out of them three.
Yeah, I'd have been a little bit worried about that in previous weeks, I think, but the way he played against Tottenham, I thought was really, really promising, really pressed well, and really did a lot of the things that Liverpool are looking for from that number 9. Obviously didn't necessarily have a huge goal threat, but did a lot of other things. He won the penalty, didn't he, and was decisive in a couple of those moments. So a similar performance from him, I think that would definitely go a long way to Liverpool hopefully finding a way to win at Goodison Park. But we will finish, and we don't do this very often, but we will finish with a score prediction. It's obviously a big game. It's a special occasion, so I brought the score predictor back out. I'll go first. I'm going to go bold. I'm going to go Liverpool to win 2-0 at Goodison Park in the last game. I think if they can ride out that early storm, I think they will find a way to get a couple of moments of quality, similar to Bournemouth, really. They had to start well in that game. They did. It took a little bit of time, but then eventually Mohamed Salah proved to be decisive on that occasion. I think it could be something a little bit similar on this occasion as well. So, just to finish, a score prediction from yourself, Tom.
I think it's going to be a 1-0 to Liverpool. I think that it's going to be one of them games where there's a lot of build-up and a lot of emotion around the game, but I think when the players are kind of locked in, 90 minutes on the pitch, I think that Liverpool will get the job done. And I don't think it'll be as kind of rough and tumble maybe as people are predicting, and I think Liverpool will be able to silence the crowd ultimately. So yeah, I'm backing them to get a slim victory, I'd say, on the day.
Well, Liverpool wins and clean sheets from both of us. Hopefully that does prove correct, and Liverpool can move 9 points clear at the top of the Premier League table. More big games to come as well, as we mentioned before. By the time we do the podcast next week, Liverpool will have played Everton. They'll have played Wolves as well. Probably will have played Aston Villa, though I can't remember exactly when we're going to be recording next week. But at some point, we will bring you another Liverpool.com podcast. For this week, I think that will just about do us, though. Thank you, as ever, to Tom for joining me, for you at home as well, for watching and for listening. And we will catch you at some point next week when, fingers crossed, Liverpool are still 9 points clear at the top of the Premier League.